This is part 3. Cosmo went missing before. The two women I talked to admitted they hated Cosmo, but they both said they didn't kill him. This seemed like too stupid a thing to bother lying to a reporter about, so I had to explore other possibilities of what happened to Cosmo. To do that, I headed to Southern Oregon to talk to as many people as I possibly could.
I mean, the bird had left a paper trail. There's a record of this bird being a nuisance to people, so.
My first stop was Wildlife Images, a wild animal rehabilitation center outside of Grants Pass.
We take in wildlife that has an injury, might be orphaned. Our goal is to make a treatment plan for that animal to ultimately be able to release it back into the wild. We also have a walking park tour of permanent ambassadors. Now, these animals can't be released to the wild for various reasons.
I stopped here because it turns out what I was investigating was actually Cosmo's second disappearance. The first time he went missing was just before he showed up at the school. On November 18th, the two neighbors, the ones who felt terrorized by Cosmo, worked together to coax Cosmo into a pet carrier and drop him off at Wildlife Images. For them, it was a last-ditch effort to keep the bird and their family safe.
The neighbor caught him and I took him to Wildlife Images so he'd be out of here and in a safe place, and they released him. I couldn't believe when he came back and was on the news. Right? Yes, he ended up at a school and then several articles, and then people like this jerk of a bird.
And side note, we'll be calling these neighbors Neighbor 1 and Neighbor 2 in this series because they spoke to me on the condition of anonymity, and my bosses okayed that. The Wildlife Center thought Cosmo was brought in for an injury, but really, it was because he was being a jerk. Or, in more formal words, Cosmo was too habituated and thus too unafraid of people.
Habituated is when they become too used to people. Wild animals should be very fearful of people. That's how they're able to survive safely in the wild.
Yeah, you can't tell me what to do.
If an animal is coming too close to people, interacting with them, that can put them in a really dangerous situation. Not everybody likes crows. They don't want them walking into their houses and landing on their kids' heads, things like that. Maintaining those appropriate boundaries is really important for their survival.
So Cosmo's trip to Wildlife Images, what we are informally calling a bird napping, was the first time he went missing. And Janelle didn't know where he was.
And I mean, I cried. I'm talking, I cried and I cried and I called. I'd get on the roof and I'd call and call and call and call and call his name. Mama! And then I went to sleep that night and I had a dream. And I woke up in the morning, I says, he's at a sanctuary. And Dewey's like, I kind of thought about that. I said, the neighbor is lying to me. When I went to her house, she never is quiet. She was simple, she wanted us to leave. She wouldn't really talk to me, it was short. She knows what happened to my bird. I know it.
During the 4 days Cosmo spent in lockup, the bird apparently played it cool. Staff said he never talked or acted strange in any way, and he was released on November 22nd. There are no records of exactly where he was released, but it likely wasn't far from Wildlife Images, which is about 30 miles north of where Cosmo lived. That school where Cosmo showed up 7 days later, as the crow flies, it's right in between. Maybe he was flying home when he got distracted by the school. But I had a few more questions for Wildlife Images, because who was this? Shortly after Cosmo disappeared for the second time, and after the school incident, Wildlife Images posted this photo to their Facebook page. They said it was an American crow named Walter, and Walter's story sounded eerily similar to Cosmo's. Too habituated, loves people. Could Walter actually be Cosmo? Next time on The Mystery of Cosmo the Talking Crow, I meet Walter and try to find out, is this Cosmo or a coincidence?